This is a quick look at the new Dyson Light Ball I bought recently to replace my old DC41, which I had for about 5 years or so, and worked really well. It cost me about 200 quid on offer, and I thought I'd make a short video showing some of the more detailed things that I wanted to know before I bought one, but I couldn't find mention anywhere online. So maybe this will help anyone else who's thinking about buying one. I found assembling it out of the box was much easier than the DC41. They've streamlined it, so there's fewer separate parts and they fit together much more easily. The head just clicks on now with no fiddly bracket clips anymore. It's much easier to remove as well. You just slide the slider and pull it off. The wand and handle attachment are pretty funky. When you put the wand in the hose, the handle clips into the main unit permanently, and then after that you can just lift out the wand and the hose separately. The tool attachment slides onto the hook at the side, and then you can mount the tools on it. The stir tool's supposed to sit on the crevice tool now, on the top of it. I'm not sure I like this change as much because it's a bit more hassle fiddling with tools if you only want the crevice tool. You can twist the hook on the wand to release the cable and then back to hook it back on. And there's a clip at the plug head to help secure it to the rest of the cable. Just wanted to talk a bit about the best way I found to empty the bin with minimum mess. The trick is to avoid splashing the dirt by dropping it from height. So if you put the bin at the very bottom of a plastic bag, open the trapdoor and then gently shake as you lift it out, you essentially slide the dirt out without splashing and making a cloud of dust. If you lift it out just right, you can actually get very little dust on the outside as well, and even if you get a bit on there, you can just wipe it off with a dry dusting cloth before you put it back on the machine. It's pretty easy when you get the hang of it. But that's not to say that some kind of bin emptying improvement couldn't be made in the future. Like seemed to have been made actually with this dual trapdoor feature that's on the Kinetic Animal Pro 2 cylinder vac that's just been released in France. Removing the shroud is another thing I've seen people struggle with. The trick is to push the button to release that side and then twist the bin gently and it just pops off. And when you put it back, you just have to match the clip in the hole on the back side first and then lift the front side back up until the button clicks back in. One of the reasons why I'd remove the shroud is to get rid of any fine dust that can accrete on the fine mesh. I do get the feeling that this light ball is recycled old technology because some of the Dyson machines have self-cleaning shrouds now which scrape the dust off the shroud when you open the bin. There's also no kinetic technology in this, so you still need to clean the filters, which I'll show later. I've also seen some people who clean the bin with wipes or water every time they empty it for some reason, then struggle to open the trapdoor easily next time. If it's been washed, the rubber can become sticky, and it's supposed to have dust on it or powder from the factory to help it slip. So the trick is to keep the rubber seal dusty so it slides properly when you open it and doesn't get jammed. So no kinetic technology in this one, so there are filters that you need to wash every month apparently, although it's not clear why every month and not 6 months like it used to be before switching to 3 months and now just 1 month. They don't really explain why. So this first filter is actually smaller than the one on the DC41 and it doesn't have a plastic base, which makes it much easier to squeeze the water out. The other one, the HEPA filter, is in the ball, so you just have to unscrew the clip and take the cover off and then you can twist it out. It's got a spongy bit on one side now, protected with a plastic grill. The HEPA folded paper bits inside, and there's now like a black sponge baffle in there which needs to be taken out and rinsed as well. You can sort of push the baffle back in under the 4 plastic clips to hold it. I think the sponge and the baffle are in there now to help suppress noise. This vacuum is really quiet, by the way, compared to the DC41. I was really impressed with it. You could probably even use it at night if you needed to for some reason. It's that quiet. The camera doesn't really give the impression that it's quiet though, but it is in real life. It almost sounds muffled. One of the new pieces of technology in this version is the fancy new cleaner head with its wider diameter brush bar and those fancy solid spiral bristles. They've also made it way more user friendly and easy to take the bar out now, so you don't actually need to get a screwdriver or use coins. You just push the button to lift the catch up and then you just pull it straight out. and it actually spins really smoothly, and it's essentially just a hollow tube. The bristles are pretty stiff, I think mostly because they're much shorter and so they're less flexible and bendy. They are pretty stiff, but at the same time they're not like sandpaper that's going to shred your carpet like a lawnmower. So they market this epicyclic drive technology, but you can't really see any of that. And this spindle seems to drive the brush bar, and it fits into a groove at the deep end of the brush tube. There's also an O-ring seal at the other end of the motor spindle, which I think is there to prevent dust getting down into the brush tube and causing problems. I guess this stuff gets too technical for marketing, but is pretty interesting in a geeky way. The base has 4 small wheels to help it move on the floor, and there's like a feather soft velvet strip on the back and side edges, which I think is to help dust hard floors. Once you've deheard the brush bar, it just slides back in and clips back on. One thing I've noticed though is that the bristles at the edge get stuck under the cover and need pulling out, which Dyson seem to have overlooked. It only takes a second though to pull out both strips of the bristles. Each side of the head has these 2 bleed holes to help suck dirt in from the sides during edge cleaning. One of the best features of this new head design is the brilliant mode switch at the front. There's normal mode, plus mode, and minus mode. The minus mode closes the front pickup channels, but opens the top vents, and it's supposed to be used on carpets which restrict airflow from underneath, and so make the head stick too hard, and make it really hard to push. And this used to happen a lot with my DC41, and was my single biggest hate. It was actually so powerful that it was too hard to push sometimes, and it would just be too much work to vacuum. But this feature really works, and seems to solve that problem, and makes vacuuming so much easier and less of a workout. Normal mode closes the top vents but opens front channels. This mode's the default and is amazing for large debris pickup and brilliantly solves the problem of snow ploughing, as I'll show you later. The plus mode keeps the top vents closed, and it also closes the front channels so suction can only come up through the carpet into the head, and also via the side bleed holes, which open on all modes. So this is like a deep cleaning max mode for carpets, but it does make the head really clamp down on the floor. I really love this head switch, and it lets you do all kinds of cleaning tasks. I don't think Dyson marketed it very well at all actually. It seems like the best thing they've come out with for a while, and I kind of hope they keep this level of functionality in all future upright models, because it's genuinely brilliant, and I don't know of any other vacuum that's as versatile. I thought it was also worth looking at the borders to determine the unswept path regions. I'll show the consequences of this later in the demos. The right edge, which is the worst, has about 25 mils of unswept path, whereas the left edge is much less at about 10 mils. The front edge does stick out a lot more in this head, and there's about 45 to 50 mils of unclean path, which has an impact on front carpet cleaning, as I'll show later. The distance to the brush tips when they touch the carpet, i.e. the unswept distance, is about 70 to 75 millimeters, which is quite big and maybe could be improved on in future iterations. The width of the open head is just over 50 mils and wider than the DC41, and its length is about 255 mils. The whole cleaner head is narrower though than the DC41 and is about 280 mils, so just under 30 centimeters. All the tools have this quick release function now compared to the DC41, so the buttons are on the tools now as their own sealed unit rather than separately on the hose or the wand. So you can press and slide off in a single action rather than having to press a button and then grab the tool to pull, hoping that it was properly unclipped. This was another thing that I don't think was well explained on the internet or by Dyson marketing and what it actually meant. And it's a nice feature, and all the tools nicely fit onto either the wand or the hose as normal. The combination crevice brush tool is longer now, and the brush is much better controlled, so it clips into position at the base and you press the button to release and slide, and then it clips at the top. The bristles are similar and nice and soft. and you can press the button again to more easily take the brush off the end of the crevice tool and put it back on. It's also got bleed holes at the tip again, like some of the much older Dyson models used to. So you keep good suction, but don't get that sudden jolt and motor strain if you block the end up with like a curtain or a sock or something. And it just feels much better and higher quality design and classy now. The stir tool is similarly redesigned with nicer contact angles in these side bleed holes, and it's also got a soft velvet strip too to grab lint. I noticed that its internal profile is also shaped so it fits onto the top of the crevice tool to house on the machine. But like I said before, I'm not sure I like this feature because you have to faff with the stir tool if you only want the crevice tool. I think Dyson should probably rethink that. The head makes really nice full path groom lines now without the missing lines that the DC41 had because of its rug strips. They've been taken out and it's much better now. Another thing they've addressed that people complain about is the locking mechanism to keep the vacuum upright. So on the DC41 it was a mechanical lock that you had to push forward to make it stick in place and not fall back over. Now they've got like a foolproof magnetic lock which always grabs and locks so it never falls back. And it's not any harder to pull back and unlock, so it's actually a really nice fix. One of my few complaints about the light ball is that the stretched out hose length is just a bit shorter than the DC41's, maybe by like 30 centimeters or so. It doesn't sound like much, but getting good tool contact on the top step of stairs is quite hard now, and I feel like I'm pulling too hard on the hose and it might break. They should have made it a bit longer, in my opinion. I've got 13 steps to the landing, so there should be enough hose to comfortably reach 12 instead of 11, so I think it's a slight retrograde there. The tangle-free turbine tool doesn't come with the basic light ball model, but I bought it separately for about 30 quid rather than paying like £200 more for the animal version of the light ball, which wasn't on offer that had it included. This 2017 version of the tool does seem subtly different to the version for the DC41. I don't know if it is or not. It doesn't seem to slow down as much when on a surface and seems much quieter because the original was really noisy. Another thing I've seen some people complain about with the ball technology that I've never quite understood is that it's difficult to steer or not as easy as rival knockoff swivel heads. But once you get used to driving it, I find it's really easy to turn and gives you a lot more control. And you can even make like 90-degree turns without even moving your legs. Anyway, now for the fun stuff. So I decided to start with a test that most people don't bother to do for some reason, but it really highlights how good a vacuum cleaner is. So this is fine dust on a hard floor, or flour in this case. I tried each cleaner head mode with and without the brush bar being on and looked at how it performed. So plus mode is with both the front channels and the top vents closed. It's really hard to push on hard floors because it sucks so hard, but as you can see it completely cleaned all the flour. The default mode with the front suction channels open performed just as well and was far easier to push. This is the mode intended for hard floors. Minus mode with the front channels down and the top vents open also performed equally well, and I think the felt strips are helping a lot. Plus mode with the brush bar on performs just as well in all modes. These are not industry standard tests, by the way. I don't have the equipment or the space to test to IEC 60312 specs. These are just fun little visual demos of the general performance and features you get. This is a nice visual test showing how big particles are picked up in default mode, which has the front pickup channels open. Most vacuums, including many older Dysons, snowplow big particles like this because they can't fit under the head on hard floors. But this vacuum is amazing and just sucks it all up really easily, and that's with or without the brush bar being on. One thing I will point out is that when the brush bar is on, picking up this unrepresentatively massive pile of big particles, which you just never do in day-to-day use. Sometimes the odd one gets flung out of those side bleed holes on the head I showed you before, as you can see, but this would be really rare in normal use though, and you can just turn off the brush bar to stop it happening. And just to highlight the snowplowing effect, the plus and minus mode, which blocks the front channels and prevents big particles from getting into the cleaner head. So this head, offering different modes for different messes, is really well done. This is an edge test on hard floors, so I'll put down some large particles and general dust and hair. and it's in normal mode for hard floors. The right edge with the wider unswept paths underneath still gets pretty much everything. I did the demo twice, although I accidentally moved the bin the second time. The left edge with a smaller gap underneath is also good. The front edge pickup did an amazing job on hard floors, even with the big unswept region underneath. The front channels just seem to suck all the loose dirt right in. On carpets though, there was a bit of an issue. Carpets are grippier to dirt than hard floors, so that few centimetres of unswept path does leave dirt behind. In fact, you can see where the brush stops grooming the carpet pile. Also, my camera focused in on the bin rather than the floor here, which is why it's slightly out of focus. The wider gapped right edge got most of the edge mess after a couple of passes, but you probably still need to get the crevice tool out. But the narrower left edge did a much better job and pretty much got all of it without the need for a crevice tool, so vacuum with that edge where possible. Maybe Dyson could improve these unswept border regions going forward with this brushbar design to be more like the left edge, say a centimetre at most. So that's my quick overview of my thoughts on the new Dyson Light Ball I bought. I actually really like it, and it's a lot lighter, more manageable than the DC41. The thing that struck me most when I first turned it on compared to the DC41 was how unbelievably quiet and muffled it was. It's amazing how noise seems to psychologically equate to power, because at first I thought it was really weak and nerfed and blamed the EU energy rulings, but later I realised the exact opposite was actually true. This is way more powerful, modern and feature-rich than the DC41. The multi-moded cleaner head is brilliant. The groom lines are better, it's easy to push, it picks up big particles but also deep cleans really well on carpet. The first time I used it, it found stuff in the carpet the DC41 apparently missed, but the second time I vacuumed over straight after with an empty bin, it didn't pick up much more, showing it was genuine stuff that had been left behind. So I'm really impressed with this. The only negatives are the right edge unswept path is too large for carpets, as is the front edge, and the hose shouldn't have been shortened. It also has a funky smell when you first use it, which I think is the filter material, but that'll probably wash away with time. I do think they should have used kinetic technology in this and had a self-cleaning shroud. That stuff not being in it is a retrograde in available technology in my opinion. The new Kinetic Animal Pro 2 cylinder vac just released in France does have the kinetic tech and a self-cleaning bin shroud, despite using only 700 watts or less than 900 for the new 2017 EU rules. So those ratings aren't really hampering that technology, and it can be done, so there's no excuse really. Here are a few stats about it from their website. Dyson claim it only has 90 air watts, which is much less than previous products and rivals. They've always argued that air watts was some important metric in measuring cleaning performance, but this doesn't seem to be true. So I'm confused about the real value of the number of air watts and what that really equates to in practice. Because this thing sucks hard to the floor and extracts things the DC41 with its 120 air watts left behind. I think things are far more complicated than any one metric alone, as much as I'm sure marketing hate that. And in fact, the same thing goes for the product fish, which I've put up. It's not really clear how the values for cleaning performance are measured. So the light ball gets C ratings across carpet and hard floor, but Dyson nevertheless claimed that no other upright vacuum cleans better across carpet and hard floors. And this is as measured by IEC 60312, which as far as I know is what the EU ratings use. So it's totally inconsistent and confusing, as a consumer I'm left having to just see for myself. And I can't exactly try all vacuums, so the labels are completely unhelpful. The upshot is, Dyson's claim seems to best represent my experience. The light ball is much better than the DC41, and I'd highly recommend it, and especially the new cleaner head, particularly if you can get it at a good price and want an upgrade.